Let me take you on a tour of my garden in May. And my garden is a bit unique in that I combine wildflowers with cultivated species. The theme of my garden and also of my work as an artist is coexistence, letting nature exist alongside humanity and things that have come about through work of humanity. So now we can let the tour begin. It's a bit windy right now, but we'll go on anyway. And we can start with this rosemary tree. And rosemary is actually my favorite herb, and it's also very special because it's just always loaded with wild and with honey bees. And you can see that I've made a tree out of this rosemary plant. And now we'll go down to where we have the lilies of the valley. Lily of the valley is also an endemic plant here. And it's really a very, very easy to grow ground cover. And here we have the wild geraniums, which are starting to bloom. And in addition, I also have two geraniums. This one is the mother plant, and it's about 4 years old now, and it's been dormant in the garage, so it won't be making flowers for a while. But I did make a baby of it in the winter, and it's just blooming beautifully. I also have lilacs in the garden, but they are really starting to fade. And this is the Vinca minor. It's an important bee and butterfly plant. And you'll see the lavender behind it. And there's an awful lot of salvia in this garden. And here around this rose, I have two different species. I have the Salvia Maynau, and I have Salvia pratensis, which is the endemic form of it. And in the garden, I also have quite a focus on roses. There are over 30 roses here, and I would say about 13 of them are wild and the rest are cultivated. And this is Rosa gallica, so it's a wild rose that's waiting to bloom. The wild roses are really lovely, and they're really important for bees, also wild bees, but they only bloom for approximately 3 weeks, whereas the cultivated roses will give me lovely blooms all summer. And now I'd like to show you one of my very favorite plants. This is Immenblatt. And it's a wild plant that is very important, again, for bees. And it's endemic to Germany. And it's covered with all these beautiful little orchids. And it is a relative to the nettles, but it doesn't have any of the, it's not an invasive plant. It's very compact, and it reproduces itself very slowly. So then we come to another one of my favorites. This one is not quite blooming yet, but it's the Diptam, or Dictamnus albus, and it's a very, very beautiful leaf as well as flower. And it's also really has a lot of visits from bees, wild bees and honeybees, and etc. And then I have the bleeding hearts. And the Kuschella are actually done right now, but this was really quite beautiful, so I've put another one in here because it seems to really like this spot. And you can see growing up the stairs, I have multiples of this Immenblatt, or this bee plant. And then here on this side, we have lovely irises. And mixed next to the irises, I have this wonderful ground cover of wild strawberries and Vinca minor. again. And then as we go on, stock roses and these wild geraniums are also starting to bloom. And we have a lot of small daisy-like flowers we call Gänseblümchen in Germany. And they are also really important to a lot of insects. So we only mow the lawn here maybe every 1.5 to 2 weeks in order to give them a chance to bloom. This is another hornkraut, another white endemic ground cover. And another wild geranium. These lilacs are still blooming. They're so lovely. And this is another small rose beet. And I have buttercups growing as on the border to it. And let me show you another one of my favorite wild plants. This is the violet King's Spire, or the Violette Königskerzen. It's a 2-year plant, biannual plant, and it's just also very important for bees. You can see the phlox is still blooming. And this is a winter hardy snowball. And the lupines have also started, as well as the scabiosas, the Witwerblumen. This is the herbal part of the garden. So I have marjoram, and I have curry kraut, and I have timian, and then you can see here the Bohnenkraut. This is an herb that's very good in bean dishes. And this is a wild rose. It's actually my first wild rose which has started to bloom. And it's really quite lovely. So, I also have a lot of poppies in the garden. And in this whole area, in about a month, it'll be covered with poppies, wild poppies. You can see the first ones have not yet started to open. And today the first oriental poppy has started to bloom. And these are also really nice because they are also visited by by wild bees and also by honeybees. And here is the Salvia Mainau in bloom. So the other flower that is endemic and blooming right now is the Accolei, and I have it mixed in then with the roses and with the Jacob's Ladder. Here are purple and pink variants, and my rose trees are not yet blooming. This is Saxifraga, and this is a plant that grows really well in rock gardens and in dry places. And this is Seifenkraut, and it's a wild Wilde Wicke. These are also 2 German endemic plants. And I have multiples of the poppies, the wild and the cultivated poppies, all spread out in the garden. Here's some more herbs which are really, really wonderful for pollinators. So this is lemon verbena. And this is a form of peppermint. This is estragon, and salvia. And this salbei is really wonderful. It's totally covered with bees when it's blooming. This is my one non-German endemic plant. It's a Virginia rose in honor of my brother living in Virginia. Salvia next to it, because the oils from the salvia are very good for promoting the health of the rose. And I've set some rosemary here as well. Another wild rose. This is the Essig rose and the Rosa gallica. So I have also Muscateller salbei. This is another form of salvia that is wild. It's really beautiful, that I got from a dear friend. And I have some nectar. This whole border surrounding this flower bed contains nectar plants. And here is a tree, peonia. And this section of the garden here is not yet blooming, but it has roses and it has Salvia pratensis, and it just loves this spot here. And this is one of the most wonderful plants for bees. It's, I think, the biggest bee magnet I have in the whole garden. And then here we have the butterfly bush. And this is the Rauer Alland. This is also a really wonderful little wild endemic plant that has really beautiful small yellow daisy-like flowers, and it grows really anywhere. You can see I have it growing in the rocks here. And it's non-invasive, and it's just giving flowers from the middle of June through to the fall. So let me see if there are any other highlights. The pond we have, and I have also introduced some new endemic water plants, but I will cover them another time as they're just starting to grow here. So that is the view and virtual tour of the backyard of my garden. And it's my hope that maybe somebody who watches this video will like the idea and maybe also make room in their garden for wild endemic plants. The weather has been really bad in Germany this year. In closing the video, I'd like to show you some of the beautiful wildflowers that I've talked about and shown in this video as they have bloomed later in the month and in earlier years. Lily of the Valley in an earlier year. The Essig rose and Salvia pratensis. Oriental poppy with the Essig rosa. Immenblatt. Peonia tree. Violet Königskarzen. Diptam or Dictamnus albus. Again, the biggest bee magnet in my garden, Salvia pratensis. And last but not least, the Astlose Graslilie, a wild German lily, wild geranium, Kuhschelle, and wild poppies.